Okay, there we go. All right, welcome in.
Hi.
So yeah, we were talking about we couldn't tell which one of which person was which one was a shittier person. Was it Phil or the father? And they were like kind of running neck and neck.
Depends how far into the book you've read.
Well, we're done. We're done the book. Everybody's
Good.
finished the book, and yeah, we like the father was kind of a piece of shit for most of the book, and then when it's revealed that like he was also in the bathroom at the time, I was like, oh my god, he's so much worse.
It's a good scene.
It
That was
was
a fun scene to write.
So what brought on the idea of Hatchet Girls in general? Because this is your ninth book.
Hatchet Girls is my 8th. So
Eighth.
The Silence, which comes out in September, will be my 9th.
Okay.
Yes. So it was, I mean, I made a switch with Small Town Monsters, which came out in 2021. That was my first horror novel. So
Okay.
that was when I kind of made a jump. So my first 3 books came out in, 2008. They were just YA contemporary Latina romances. And then my next 3 books were international YA spy thrillers, so completely different. So I hadn't figured out like what my niche was or what my brand was. And Small Town Monsters came out of the pandemic. I mean, I started writing it in 2019, which was like the lead up to the election, the 2020 election. It was just like a dark time. And I always say that that was like Small Town Monsters was the first book I wrote that I think I would have read as a kid. That I read very, dark horror thriller YA. I grew up in the 90s, so it was very much like Christopher Pike and R.L. Stine, Fear Street, all of that. So then Hatchet Girl sort of was a continuation of that, of sticking with the horror vein.
Okay.
I had been watching the most recent adaptation of Lizzie Borden, the movie with Kristen Stewart plays Lizzie and Chloe Sevigny plays her maid, Bridget Sullivan, and it imagines that the two of them had a romantic relationship, and that is why they plotted to kill the parents together because the parents didn't approve. So I was watching that film, and I just was struck with the idea of, wow, I wonder if there's been an axe murder in Fall River since this happened. And I paused it and I Googled it, and there hasn't been. And that sort of just led me down the path of learning all the other supernatural, creepy stuff that has happened in Fall River and the Bridgewater Triangle in general, which just really felt like it lent itself to a horror novel.
Well, that's really good. Yeah, this is Hatchet Girls, guys, right here. The book that she was talking about is Small Town Monsters. It's on my TBR. I'm just like, I gotta read it. But yeah, so Hatchet Girls, it was really good. I liked it. I'm somewhat familiar with the Lizzie Borden case, but I didn't realize that she got off. Like, I just because again, like
Yeah.
in the Northeast, the story, the general story, and the rhyme.
Yeah.
And then you didn't realize, oh yeah, she was a real person and she was acquitted. I was like, oh.
I
Oh,
know.
I didn't know
I don't
that.
think I fully realized it either until I started researching it. I learned that the nursery rhyme existed during Lizzie's lifetime, that it was
Oh, that
likely
makes it so
created.
much worse.
Yes, it was likely created while she was on trial. Like, so she was in prison while she was on trial. And they think that it was likely created during that time. And yeah, the fact that she got acquitted, I don't think I fully realized until I researched this either, because it's always told as if she did it.
Yeah.
Now, granted, there aren't a lot of other very good suspects. I do mention a couple of them in the story, like possibly her uncle or stuff. So most people think she did do it, but that she was acquitted because it was the Victorian era. She was a white young woman and the jury was entirely white men. And I don't think they imagined a woman could have possibly committed something so violent. And whatever was going on in that household, if she did do it, was something that was clearly not talked about during the Victorian era to create that much rage. I think after having toured it and stayed at the house and talked to the locals, I believe she didn't do it alone. That's my current theory, is
Okay.
that one of the tour guys at the house who, does the ghost tours and does the historical tours, his theory was that her and the uncle and Bridget Sullivan all played a part in the murders in some way. You could really get into the nitty gritty of like what happened in the lead up to that day and all these different things. I don't know how much of the history you want, but I think the more common theory is that the three of them were either they all did it together or there were accomplices before the fact or after the fact.
Okay. Knight wants to know, what is your favorite part of this story? What is the favorite part that you wrote in Hatchet Girl?
That I wrote. So when I wrote this, so I sold this book on proposal, meaning that I wrote just the first 2 chapters and an outline of the book.
Okay.
And when I wrote the initial outline, I yada-yada'd over the axe murder. I didn't think I was going to write it. So I was like, it's young adult. I wasn't sure how far they would let me go. None of my books had been gory up to date. They'd been more spooky, eerie, like ghosty type of stuff. So I wasn't sure how far I could go. And so initially in the outline, I was like, oh, it'll be like closed door. I'll have them walk into a room after it's happened. And then when I got to the scene, because I write in a linear fashion, I don't just, even though that was the big moment that inspired the book, I don't start with that. I write chapter 1 and on. So when I got to that scene, I was like, now I'm going to do it. Like, I'm going all in. Like, I'm going to write this the way I want to write it. And it didn't get flagged whatsoever. Like, not one word of it was asked to be changed. I did have somebody who was considering blurbing it, who writes more on the younger YA spectrum, say that she couldn't blurb it because it went too far and she didn't think her readers would follow that journey.
I mean, I can
But
see
other
it.
than that,
I can see
Yeah.
it, and then again, like I like YA is such a weirdly large spectrum anymore
yeah.
because
Yeah.
like Hatchet Girls falls into it, but like so does Akatar, and I'm like,
Technically not ACOTAR. So Sarah J. Maas's first series,
Throne of
Throne of
Glass was,
Glass,
yes.
the first book was considered YA. And then it really wasn't after that. And that she was in the big first boom of new adult, what was called new adult. So it's like when you're like in that 18 to like 21 year range of characters. And it was a big boom at that time, but bookstores didn't have a place to put it. Like they didn't have it. They don't have a new adult shelf at a bookstore or a library. And because Throne of Glass was YA, they started putting her books in the YA section.
Okay.
And I don't think she, the author, ever intended it to be YA so much as it was mismarketed,
Okay.
I think. And
Yeah,
now
'cause-
they're trying to clear that up.
yeah, because I've seen that, and it's like, oh yeah, Akatar's YA. I'm like, is it though? Because like I've read it, and it's not.
It's not. And I think to her credit, to Sarah J. Maas's credit, this was not her decision. That's made
Yeah.
by the people that put together the book and put them on the shelves and all of that. So yeah, I don't think it is YA whatsoever. But
No.
in terms of like what can be YA with horror, I, do school events and I live in Pennsylvania and I talk about having done events in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, which is in the middle of the state that's in Amish country. I call it the Bible Belt of Pennsylvania.
Oh yeah, it definitely
And
is.
I had school like I've done school visits there, but I've also done store visits where a lot of teachers came and they would ask the question of, is it clean? And what they mean by that is, does it have F words? Does it have sex? Does it have drug use? And my books don't have any of that. But I would say like, oh, but it has like demonic possession and an axe murder. And they were like, that's fine. That's totally fine.
It's like, yeah,
and it
we're
didn't
good.
matter that it was a religious school. Yeah, like they were like, that's cool. So you can get away more in the murder stabby sense with YA than you can when it comes to sex or drugs or the F word.
You've heard stories of communities still in cabins. Yes. Oh no, that's absolutely true. So I'm from South Jersey. So like I'm
Yeah.
relatively close to you.
Yeah.
Like Philly's only 45-ish minutes away. So yeah, so like I've been to Lancaster. And it's such a weird cell shock because like you have normal cars riding around. It's like it's very much like outlet area, but also it's like, okay, everybody's going so slow. Why is everybody going so slow? Because there's a horse here. There's a horse and buggy coming around. And it's such a weird shell shock thing. So like I used to be very religious. We went to Mennonite camps, campuses and stuff like that. So yeah, there are absolutely those like places where you got no electricity. But
Yeah.
you live
Yeah,
in
and-
Lancaster. Okay.
Yeah, and so like there's also a big Latino population there. So I've actually done school visits in that
Mhm.
area because there is a big Latino population. But and then I grew up Catholic, so I grew up in a very religious household. And so I'm kind of my parents wouldn't even like read my books now. They read my first six, and then the minute I switched to horror, they're like, that's where they drew the line, and like couldn't really read them anymore. Yeah,
I grew up in Catholic school,
yeah.
so not Catholic, but Catholic school was interesting. A very interesting place.
It
Um,
lends itself to good horror, though. Think of all the possession stories and The Exorcist and all of that. You know, they all lend themselves to horror. So my next book, The Silence, actually takes place in the Philadelphia area, and I wanted to do a form of exorcism that wasn't based in Catholicism because I feel like that's all you ever see in the media. So I ended up going into like a whole different angle. My dad's from Puerto Rico up in the mountains, and the Native American population there, the Taino population, has their own like spiritual beliefs. So I tried to use their beliefs as the like the ritualistic part at the end of the possession story,
okay,
which is because you always see the Catholic priest, you know, and the exorcism,
very
you know,
much.
if you think of the exorcist, it didn't even work. You know, like at the end of the day, the only reason the demon, you know, jumps out of Reagan is because the priest volunteers to be the new host. You
Yeah,
know, he says, take me, you know. So,
yeah. It's an interesting. It does feel very typecast. Like, oh, possession, Catholic people coming, huh? And it's like, no, it doesn't
yes.
always have to be. Um, it's really interesting because when we talk about representation of that, like, it's always so. I grew up reading a lot of stuff, and obviously, like, you don't really notice it as much, but then all of a sudden, it's like when you open a book and they start speaking in Spanish or anything like that, and suddenly it's like, oh wait, I needed this in my life. I didn't know I did. And
Yeah.
I've loved some stories like that. Another book that I read recently was called Mortal Tether, which is another YA dystopian book from Candace Jarrett. Was also dealing with a Puerto Rican family, and I was just like, oh, you forget that, like, yeah, representation does matter. Um,
Yeah, there's been a lot of Puerto Rican horror lately. I mean, Gabino Iglesias, Cynthia Pelayo, you know, or just like Latinx horror in general, B. Castro. There's been a rise in it. And I think it's part of why the horror genre is booming right now. I always say for a very long time, it was just white men who were writing in this genre.
mhm.
And I love those books. I mean, who doesn't love Stephen King? But I think in recent, like the past, like 5 to 10 years, you've really seen a boom of other types of storytellers joining this genre.
Mhm.
Women, in particular, other ethnicities, and you're giving it like Get Out. I think was the first real example of what if horror was done by someone in the Black community. How different would this possession story look? And I think it sort of bursts the door wide open of why don't we have more horror stories where the Black person doesn't die in the beginning, but is the main character, and that is the, you know, community you're centering in the story.
I always joke about that because, like, my girlfriend and a lot of my friends are like, let's go ghost hunting. I'm like, look, ma'am, respectively, I am the voice of reason and I am a minority, so I am the first person to die in this story. I'm not going with you. I'll drive. But like,
Yes.
no. And yeah, I write a lot of horror too. Like, I have a podcast called Campfire Ashes where we do short stories. So basically, myself and my co-host, we each write a story based on lore around the world, and then we tell each other the story, and then we discuss like the lore that did it. And I just recently did one on the Duende because like my family's from Ecuador, that's a South American lore has always been very interesting.
Yeah.
And it's really fun to be able to get those stories that don't necessarily cross everybody's path.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I'm part of an anthology that's going to be coming out, I think next year. Cynthia Pelayo is putting it together, and it's called The Ghosts of Where We're From. And it's all Latinx, whatever term you want to use there. Horror writers have contributed a short story based on your own, you know, ethnic background or your personal experience. So it'll be a good little group of what exactly you're describing right there.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah. Everybody's like, yes, I will be co-pilot. I am not getting out of the car with you. It's like, look, it's fine. Yeah, horror tropes are a thing. Yeah, the Cajun like
I drag my husband around to all the haunted places, so he's stuck now going to all. We slept in Lizzie Borden's house.
I
We
don't know if I
hiked
could.
the haunted forest. Like he's like I when I married you, you were a journalist. Like you wrote about hotels. So
And,
did a strong pivot.
and you can say, well, I still write about hotels. It's just they happen to already have people there.
Yes, they're just haunted now.
Go ghost hunting with audiobooks? No, you can't. Like I buy my own audiobooks and I will stay out of the haunted areas.
Well, I will tell you where I drew the line. When I was writing Small Town Monsters, that book was inspired by Ed and Lorraine Warren, for they're the basis of the Conjuring films, if you know
Yes.
those movies. So they were real life ghost hunters.
Yes.
And when I
Ghost
wrote
Hunters is a loose term
well,
based on
they
a lot of
investigated paranormal activity for the Catholic Church.
Yes.
Okay, was their whole thing, and you could really tour their basement full of demonic artifacts in Connecticut.
Yeah,
and
and that
this
got
was
closed.
still open. Like, yeah, when I wrote the book in 2019-ish, Lorraine Warren hadn't died yet. And the basement was still open. I could have gone and toured it. And that was where I drew the line. I was like, I feel like that I had enough CCD and Catholicism growing up that I will not go into the demonic basement. Like I'll sleep in Lizzie Borden's house, but I'm not touching the Annabelle doll. Like,
Yeah. It's closed now. It's gone because like the neighbors like basically got it shut down. And I think some of the things have
it
been
was like in a normal house though. Like
Yeah.
I don't blame them. It wasn't like it was in like a big city. It was like a totally normal looking suburban house, suburban street, and these poor neighbors had to deal with this influx of like ghostly curious people constantly like parading through.
And it was like at the end of a street too. It wasn't even like a thoroughfare. Like you basically everybody got stuck at the end of the street. And yeah, I can understand that people would just like they're over it.
And that was so my basis for that was when I was watching The Conjuring, and in the first movie they reference that they're away on a job and their daughter is being haunted by some sort of entity. And I paused the film. I was like, wait, did they really have a daughter? And they did. And she does not do interviews. She is not involved in this whatsoever. I could barely even find a picture of her. Yet her husband is the one who has sort of taken up the mantle of, continuing the Warren legacy. So he's now like heading up the New England Paranormal Association, and he's like sort of picking that torch up, but she herself is not, because that was what I was imagining. What would it have been like to grow up and those were your parents and you had a basement full of demonic artifacts? Like, who's coming to your house for a sleepover? Like, no kid is coming over for a play date.
I'm not sending my
ever.
kids. Like if I had kids, I'm not
exactly. So,
that
like,
house is off limit.
Yeah, so it makes sense of why she wouldn't be doing interviews or having pictures. There has to be some resentment there, like of this weird childhood that you must have had growing up in that house.
I understand it's a museum night. I get that. And the original Annabelle doll was behind a wooden case with prayers and holy water. Yes, I get that. And also it's a Raggedy Ann doll. It wasn't a very weird, creepy thing in the movies and everything like that. And I love that. And it's interesting because like we've done a couple of Warren stories in our podcast, but like they've apparently done like 1,000 different cases. You can only find 6 online. Like,
oh really?
Yeah. It's Amityville, it's the Smurl House, it's Rhode Island, it's England, and like one other. It was the Devil Maybe the trial that they did. That's pretty much it. Like everything else, there is so little to go on from that era. So it's kind of weird that you have these very prolific people that have done like 1,000 things. It's like, oh yeah, let me see some of them. It's like, here's 6. All you're going to get is just the 6.
Well, I guess it's the ones, if you believe in it, that they felt like they had proven. I think given as religious as they were, I do believe for a good amount of time they were probably encouraged to not find these cases to be true. They were, hired by the church. So like,
they were debunkers.
In their best interest to disprove it as much as it was to prove it.
So have you been to the Smurl House? Because that's in Pennsylvania.
No, I have not yet. So like the Lizzie Borden was the first one that like I legit, ghost house, went in. Other than like, the new book, The Silence, takes place in the abandoned reform school, and that is near my house. I have gone there. But I haven't visited any other like very like ghosty places. I want to go to Gettysburg. I haven't done Gettysburg. I'd like to do that on like the beginning of July, like when the battles were, and they say it's the most haunted. I think that will be my next one. I might drag my husband to make him sleep in one of the more haunted places.
Have you been to Eastern State?
Of course. Who
Yeah.
hasn't? It's amazing. I mean, I think it's scarier when it's not a ghost house, like when it's not done up for Halloween.
It's very creepy when it's not,
It's
when
so
it's just
creepy.
there.
Yes, it's so creepy. We had friends visit from Connecticut, and we did like one of those bus tours, and you could like get afterwards. We're like, well, where do you guys want to go? Like, what do you want to see more of? And I'm thinking they're going to want to go see like Independence Hall and the Liberty Bell. They wanted to go back to Eastern State. So like, they're like, all right, let's go back to Eastern State.
Which they don't do that anymore anyway. The haunted stuff is gone now. I think COVID killed that.
Oh. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't been there since then, but I don't think I think what they changed is they made it more family friendly. I think they do still have tours, but it's not as terrifying as it was.
The tours are fine, but like they don't do the night stuff, the night Halloween stuff. They still very much do the tours and everything during the day, but they just don't do the things anymore. I've been to Fort Mott. Fort Mott is kind of creepy. And I did a story about that. Also, one of the things that I was loving about your story, like, you're the only other place I've ever heard of dealing with Pukwudgies, and I was just like, I did a Pukwudgie story.
No,
Yeah, because they're
I
kind of.
hadn't heard of it before.
Oh, Pukwudgies? Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
They are either very noble or the most violent things that you'll ever see, and they're just very tiny gremlins. They can be very like scary.
I mean, that was the cool thing about the Bridgewater Triangle, to learn that Fall River sits in this part of New England that has what cryptozoologists believe one of the most documented areas of supernatural activity. So like one of the first UFO sightings in the history of the world documented is in this Bridgewater Triangle by the colonists. As the bloodiest war per capita, in American history is in this Bridgewater Triangle. The forest there was so creepy, and the Pukwudgies, the Lady in White, they've got Bigfoot sightings. I mean, they had everything, satanic panic. I mean, you name it, it happened in this triangle.
Yeah, it's creepy. Like I said, I'm from Jersey, so like we have a whole host of things here where the worlds went down. I live near a town called Greenwich. Like we had our own witch trials in that time, right around the same time as a witch trials happened in Salem. We also had them in Greenwich. There's a grave site in Greenwich that has a log that you can actually go through and flip through that has all of the people buried here, and they include the people that were hanged. As
Now
witches
you've got me intrigued. I'm gonna have to check this out.
Oh, it's creepy. I don't like it. Like every time. So again, I'm not overly paranoid. I'm not overly like this is going to happen. But like my friends have taken me on ghost things, and I'm the only person that ever sees them, and I hate that. But like when you go to this place, you always feel like you're being watched. And I don't like that feeling at all. Like it just feels like you shouldn't be there. And it's an open place. You're allowed to go in it. You're allowed to go in it. You're allowed to go to like the location with the book and everything like that. And you're allowed to flip through the book. Like you're allowed to do all of that. It just feels like when I'm sitting there, it feels like I'm not alone. And I don't like that feeling of like I'm not alone when I'm supposed to be alone.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that's the same feeling you get in Eastern State or Alcatraz, any of the prisons when you visit.
Yeah, Eastern State is very much like, I know there are people in this building, but like there's someone standing next to me and I don't.
Yes. So that's what made the Freetown Fall River Forest so creepy. I didn't know what I was getting into when I went there. I knew like Condé Nast had named it like one of the most haunted forests in the world, like right below that Japanese forest where people just commit suicide. So like I knew that it was haunted. I knew it had the satanic panic murders in the 80s that are debatable whether there was any satanic or panic involved in them, but there were bodies found there. And then it had this big like battle between the colonists and the Native Americans. So I knew that stuff. But I had written the scenes in the book before I went. That's sort of how I write. So I wrote the whole book, including all the Lizzie Borden scenes, all the scenes in the house, in the forest, and then I go and visit. And so this way I know exactly what I need to look for. Like if she needs to walk from, where is Mariella's house going to be located? I set Mariella's house in the Historical Society. It's a real building there, and it's a big mansion. And I like then walked from there to Lizzie Borden's house so I could describe what it looked like. And so I did the same thing with the forest. So I wanted to get there when the sun was setting, get up to the ledge, the astronaut ledge, and then walk out when it was pitch black. And I made my husband do it.
Oh,
Yes.
hell no. You are a brave person. You are brave.
Yes, I made him do it. And
I don't think you
we
have
were
enough
there.
Catholicism popping around in your head. There is not enough
Oh my
CCD
God.
stuff there.
It's not the ghosts that drew me in because I also think I lived in a haunted. It's not ghosts, it's the demons. Like I won't go to something that people think are possessed by demons. That's where the
Okay.
Catholicism
Oh,
comes
okay,
in.
there you go.
The
So
ghosts
you
I
wouldn't go
was
to the
I was
Smurl
able to
haunting.
deal with.
You wouldn't go to the
Yeah.
Smurl house because demons. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
we found your line now.
My line is the demons, yeah. So the forest, though, like I had written all of these jump scares that you have in horror movies, like, birds flying out of bushes, to like all these classic things. And then I get there and there's nothing. We walked for 5 hours, at dusk, which is when wildlife tends to be more active. There were no birds, there were no squirrels, there were no chipmunks, there was no deer, there was nothing for 5 straight hours, not even a tweet.
Oh, I don't like that at all.
It was so crazy. All we heard, someone was walking their dog, so we did hear like like a dog barking. I don't think he wanted to be there, but and then we walked out and it was pitch black. Where I have a video of my cell phone where it's just our cell phone lights guiding us out, and you can hear our footsteps, but you cannot see anything. Like,
Yeah, Cajun's like, oh fuck that, no. Like that feels evil. That just
Yeah.
that's enough for me. It sounds like an amazing thing to do. I have no intention of ever doing it. Like,
Yes, and so if you go, there's a documentary on Hulu that I think is done by Blumhouse, and it's called Fall River, and it's about the Satanic Panic murders that happened in the 80s. And there are cops who absolutely believe that it was a satanic cult. Most people at this point do not. Fall River was in very dire straits at that time and had a lot of prostitution and it seems more likely now that it was just like rival prostitution pimps and stuff. One of them was a female who's in prison, but the cops that still believe that there was a cult element did bring up the fact, like they're interviewed in the forest where the bodies were found, and they said that they're like, look, nothing lives here. Listen, there are no deer here. There are no birds. He's like, something is wrong with this place, which is why I have that question that even comes up in the book in dialogue. Like, did all these dark events happen because the land is cursed, or is the land cursed because all these dark events happened?
Cajun says he grew up in Cajun country, so the unwritten rule: if you hear nothing around you, find shelter and hide. Don't come out until you hear any kind of sounds, because
Seriously.
a lot of that stuff is very creepy. But I love how your writing made that feel very visceral. Like,
Oh, good.
it felt very much like uneasy. So like I was listening to your audiobook, which by the way, your voice actors are amazing. Like, your voice actor was awesome. I don't know if did your publisher pick that, or was that something that you interviewed yourself?
I get to pick them. So they send me like 3 or 4 actors to choose from. So Small Town, they're different voice actors. The Small Town Monsters voice actor is the same one who's done a lot of Latina horror novels. She also did Mexican Gothic, so she's kind of made a name for herself in that. With Hatchet Girls, Random House, to their credit, is trying to create a new program where they're giving, new actors a shot, especially those who, are from marginalized communities. It's hard to break into. So they sent me like 4 different actors. I, wanted the reader to be a Latina, and I picked her, and I just liked her voice. My nephew reads it, and he's a big gamer like you guys, and he recognized her voice immediately. Apparently, she voices a lot of video games, so you'll have to
okay.
Google her. He knew exactly who she was, and he was like, "Oh my God, you have the same voice actor from such and such video game." And I emailed her and told her that. She was so excited. I was like, "You got recognized."
So
Yeah.
let us know about The Silence, because that's your next book coming up. That'll be coming out in September.
Yes, so that is my first Delco book. So it is based in my hometown where I grew up, Delaware County, Pennsylvania, which is south of Philadelphia. And I went to Ridley High School, if you know the area. It's a very blue collar town. So I don't have the characters in Ridley per se, but I, make it very similar in the environment. And growing up, so I graduated in like the late 90s. It Ridley was very good at sports at that point, and we used to play Glen Mills in sports. So if any of you know the area, Glen Mills was an all-boys reform school that they recruited specifically athletes. Like, so they were sent there by the courts. The boys had done something wrong. They were sent there by the courts, and if you got to go to Glen Mills, it would seem like you got to go to what they call the Harvard of reform schools. It had a really great athletic program, and some of the kids went on to play professional sports afterwards, like go to the NFL. And then it got shut down in 2018 after the Inquirer wrote this huge expose about how much abuse was going on at Glen Mills, physical abuse, emotional abuse, everything. And it sort of kicked off, or was a part of, this rise in what we call like the troubled teen industry, which has gone on for a very long time. But I think now it's finally being talked about because the kids have now become adults, and they are telling, their stories of what happened to them, and whether it was a wilderness program or a school environment. And so that was my idea. I wanted to do something about a reform school. And I mentioned this to my neighbor, and he goes, "Oh, well, I worked at Slayton Farm." I didn't even know what Slayton Farm was. And I grew up, it's right down the street from Glen Mills, only about 2 miles away. It was the all-girls reform school. Nobody ever talked about it. It shut down in 2001, but it opened in 1826 as a reform
so that's
school.
haunted as hell. I don't like that anymore.
Yes, it opened
like,
in
oh,
18,
no.
and it made the girls work the farms up until the late 70s. Like you went there, you worked the farm, like no pay, out in the fields. And so I went and visited it. It's been sitting abandoned for almost 25 years now, 24 years. It's just been sitting abandoned in complete disrepair. Like, it's now a really popular urban explorer destination because you can walk through the buildings. It's trespassing, just so you know.
Yeah.
But
It's okay. Don't worry about it. I'm not going there, so it's fine. I will drive by it.
It's off the road enough. Like, I parked my car. It's like 300 acres, just to be clear. It's on land that was once owned by William Penn. And it's not a school in the sense that you imagine like a big building. It's just a series of different Victorian cottages is what they called them. And the one in the front has like the pillars and looks like almost like a plantation house, whereas the ones farther back just look like Victorian houses. And the ones farther back, really all the plywood is gone. Like, you could walk in and do as much exploring as you want. I only stepped inside, I walked up the steps. I walked in the first room and took like a video. Like, I didn't leave the threshold very far and then walked out. Not so much that I was scared of ghosts, but in one of the houses, I could see what looked like out in front of the front door, like a sleeping bag. So it's very popular for homeless people, vagrants, people who don't have anywhere else to go, to live there. I didn't want to encounter a human, in one of the houses. Just recent. So just so you know, I finished writing the book and sent it to my agent, and literally, I think 2 days later, one of the buildings burned down. So it is still active.
Okay.
Like, it's in the book, I say that it shut down because of a fire, and that's not what happened. It shut down for financial reasons. is what they say. And so like a fire broke out like 2 days after I turned the book in. So I thought that was like, a perfect little tie-in of I made it happen, maybe. Like,
It's like people are the scariest. Let's just be honest. But Cajun was talking about it too. They had a training school that was a reform school. It was called the Mississippi's Boyd Reform, that also closed down for dubious reasons in 2008. So yeah, these are around.
So Glen Mills has a cemetery. Glen Mills has a cemetery on the property for the boys that died while in the care of Glen Mills. That exists. Slayton Farms does not have a cemetery. So imagine 1826 to 2001, girls working the fields, okay? So when I was doing my research, I spoke to Meg Applegate, who is a survivor of a troubled teen program, and she now runs a nonprofit to shut down these programs. She's written a memoir about her experiences. And I asked her that question. I was like, why do you think that Slayton Farms would be sitting abandoned all this time? I mean, 300 acres and no one has developed it. And there are reasons of like, it straddles 2 county lines, or it's this or that, or historical designation, whatever. And she said, well, have they found the bodies yet? And I was like, and she meant it literally, have they found where they buried the bodies
like
of
a
the
pauper's
girls?
grave, kind of.
Yes. So I think that is definitely a factor. Like, I feel like there's which is why I say it's Girl Interrupted meets Poltergeist, because if you know Poltergeist, it's like you move the headstones, you didn't move the bodies. Like, I feel like there's probably a lot buried on that ground that would need to be excavated.
So it's very much like, look, we can have plausible deniability, and once we start like putting shovels in the ground, then we have to admit that like, oh, there's a lot of bodies here.
Yes. And not to mention, with that many acres in that part of Pennsylvania, it probably also has Native American ties and stuff. There would just be a lot going into it. Whereas Glen Mills down the street has reopened since I started writing The Silence, which is kind of depressing. It has reopened as another reform school, and even more depressing, some of the people who had worked at Glen Mills for decades in the administration were rehired to work at the now clock.
So they just bring the problems back out.
They just brought them right back. Yeah. So like and it was the quietest reopening. Like, it is so difficult to even find a news article that says it reopens. Like, you'd find an article saying that they're trying to reopen it, but when it actually reopened, nothing, crickets, not even a press release. So they really tried to keep it very hush hush that they did this, and that they rehired a lot of the same people, which is just super depressing.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I was able to tie in, so like these buildings, like I said, they're these series of Victorian cottages. Under Glen Mills in particular are tunnels, like actual tunnels that go back to like the William Penn days, that were intended to get you from one building to the next without having to go out in the snow or the rain. But during its, worst abusive periods, the counselors would use these tunnels to like pop up in boys' dormitories and stuff.
No.
So I kind of like combined Glen Mills and Slayton Farms, like their histories together, to create like a fictitious school, which I call Oakwell Farms, and that the girls go through in my book.
Okay.
So there's 2 timelines in the book. There's one in the present day, which is a girl who goes to the haunted location to see Oakwell Farms and comes home haunted. And then you have the alternate timeline, which is 1995, of the last crop of girls that were sent to the farm and what happened to them, and that led to the closure. And so the 2 timelines sort of like go together, very similar to Hatchet Girls, until they sort of meet,
Yeah, until we all learn to hate Phil.
You know what? I didn't even know Phil was going to be a bad guy until I got pretty far into the book. So like, he got worse as the story went on. So
we clocked him kind of early. It was just like,
yeah.
So we've read enough books to where it's just like, you're too nice, and not like the actual nice, like quotation nice. Like, so you're too nice. Don't like it. And then at first I'm like, I don't like this guy. And then we get to, like they're walking out into the woods. And I'm like, I really don't like this guy. And then we flash back to Phil walking into the bedroom and like, oh, I knew I hated this guy. I hate him so much. And then the next chapter, I'm like, oh my God, I hate him so much more. Like, Like,
And no one
Chad,
feels bad for him at the end. Right?
yeah, Chad's
My
like,
first red flag for Phil was right after the murders. He's all concerned, like, "Are you okay? Like, my brother just murdered your best friend's parents, and you're checking on me."
Yeah.
yeah,
Definitely. And like what was fun about Phil was because like I said, I wrote the book before I got there, and I had written that he worked at the Lizzie Borden house, all of those scenes. And then I get to the Lizzie Borden house, and there was a father and a son working at the house. So the tour guide who gave me all that historical information that I, could tell you about Lizzie Borden, he was the father, and his son worked at the gift shop. And so I was able to interview them both and get their sides of the story, and it was kind of fun. And the dad had the thickest Massachusetts accent, which is what I give to Phil, though his son did not. And I even asked him, I was like, why don't you have your dad's accent? And he's like, I don't know.
that was actually something that I really liked in the audiobook. The audiobook was really good about that. I was like, oh man, he's got the wicked hardcore accent, and I was just like, oh, that, like, they nailed it. They nailed it very well, and I was just like, okay, this works.
I went to Boston University, and my literary agent lives in Boston. Like, so I just am very familiar with that accent that I was like, I have to do it. I even try to put the Delco accent into the silenced a little bit, as much as I could, like, work it in there. I have the mom in the book have all the Delcoisms that, like, I sort of grew up with.
You call it water?
I do have her say water. I broke water. I broke water when I got to Boston when I went to college, because you don't know you have an accent until you leave your hometown.
No, I
so
grew up,
I had
South
no
Jersey
idea.
has it too. I said water for the longest time.
Oh my gosh. Like, this is like 20 plus years of me trying to not have a Delco accent is what you're hearing right now. So like I had the thickest like Mayor of Easttown accent, and I get up to Boston. And so when you're in Boston and you have people tell you, where are you from? You have a really strong accent. You're like, okay. A lot of people thought it was from the South. They're like, but not like the South, like South Carolina, like maybe like Tennessee or like someplace Arkansas, somewhere they didn't know what the accent was.
Yeah, the Delaware Valley has a weird, muddled Southern accent, and I think it's just because a lot of people say here. Because you can hear it, because like I have a lot of family in West Virginia, and because of where we live, I can pop into that accent in a heartbeat, and then it takes me like a week to stop talking like a West Virginianer. And they are from the Virginia Treadwater accent, apparently, what they're saying. You have an accent that was learned. So accents are really cool. There was a fun YouTube video that I saw that had like really went through all the accents, rhotic language barriers, and all that kind of stuff. Really interesting. But
it was super fun when Mayor of Easttown came out with that Kate Winslet HBO show, and everyone was making fun of her accent, and SNL did a whole sketch on the accent, and Kate Winslet did all these interviews saying how hard it was to like pick up the accent, because it makes no logical sense.
No, it
like
doesn't.
You draw out your O's, like you say, like, hoagie, like, can you get the phone? Like, you draw out these O's. Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear it.
Yeah.
Go ahead, kid.
Or our A's. Our A's are weird, like mad. I say mad,
The very first time the accent was introduced in the book, like, I heard it the way it's supposed to be said.
Yes.
So you did amazing writing with it.
Thank you. Well, you know what? So I had my literary agent is from Boston, and then one of the copy editors, it was also from Boston. So then we ended up getting into like this three-way fight sometimes over how to phonetically pronounce certain sentences, like which ones like had an R and which ones didn't. And the funniest was Dunkin' Donuts. So I think I had him say, like, I put a couple drops in the original draft. I put a couple drops in your Dunkins, plural. And they were like, absolutely not. That is not it. It's Dunkin'. But then the copy editor's like, no, it could be Dunkies. And then there was like this intense debate over how, like, we even like tweeted at Dunkin' Donuts to have them finish the sentence. Like, how would you finish this? Because they're very intense about the brand up there. Yeah. About whether you go with Dunkin' or Dunkies.
Oh, that's one of my favorite commercials that's going on, is like the Ben Affleck, like, just falling back into that hard Boston accent with the donuts commercial.
Oh
It's
my God. The Casey
hilarious.
Affleck SNL sketch. Have you seen that where he's at Dunkin' Donuts and then he's like, go back to Starbucks and he like throws the coffee?
Yes, I know the exact one.
Yes.
I was
Uh,
crying during, like I was just, I couldn't keep it together for anything. Because
Yeah.
I've only been to Boston once, and for the most part, like you don't hear it, but every now and then you'll run into a person. Like I got lost, and I stopped. It was like a construction guy, and then he started talking, and I'm trying to like keep a straight face because I'm like,
Yeah.
you have the most stereotypical thing. Like it feels like you're doing this for tourists. And it's like, and then
Yeah.
it took me a couple seconds. I'm like, oh no, he's real. Like this is a real
Oh
person.
yeah. That's how my agent actually speaks, to the point where like when I've referred people to him or he's spoken to people, I actually tell them in advance before they get on the phone, just so you know, he has a very thick Boston accent. Like, I want to prepare you because you're going to giggle and you got to suppress it. All right?
You get, that's what I did. Because like this guy was like, this man could break me in half because he was a burly, he was like a burly, like I put telephone poles on my shoulder kind of like burly man. So it's just like,
Yeah.
keep a straight face. He will kill you, and then he will bury he will bury your body in the harbor. So like he will.
Yes.
Oh, you went to so
Yeah.
Rose went to Boston this past summer. So yeah, it's like it's a very jarring thing because like you sit and you read it in literature sometimes and you don't really think that like, oh man, that's a real accent. So you get
Yeah.
there, and New York's that way similar too. It's like New York. There's a lot of people that speak normal, like what you would think of like stereotypical English, but then you'll get those few people that like, oh, what are you talking about, dog? Like, oh my god, I get
Yeah.
my dog, and I get my coffee, and I'm
You
like,
got to go in the other boroughs. Like Long
Yes.
Island talks like what you're saying, and then Brooklyn's got its own thing. You know, like most of Manhattan are transplants, so like you won't hear it too much in Manhattan as you will in the other boroughs.
yeah, my girlfriend's from Brooklyn. Every now and then
Yeah.
she'll get mad, and then the Brooklyn will come out. And I'm like,
That's what my husband says about Delco. He's like, "You're don't go Delco on these people." You know, like,
because like
because
again,
of the Delco finger.
oh,
He's like, "Don't go Delco on these people."
like
Like,
because yeah, I can hear it too. When I'm
Yeah.
in Philly, I'm like, oh yeah, that's a. I have friends from the Delco area, and it's just like, oh yeah, no, there is a tone, and it is very pronounced. So yeah, like that's what like I said, it's like we had a bunch of people that read your book, very happy about it. And it's one of the things that we've started doing with our book club in general. Like you're the second author that's come on the channel doing interviews for the book and talking about your book. I think it's a very fun thing for us to do because it's like, yeah, so there's a very passive thing where it's like, oh yeah, we're reading this book, that's fine. But it's really interesting to be able to get the author on and talk about like how the book came together, what their previous projects were, what their future projects were, and this has been a lot of fun. And I have a lot of
Yeah.
fun with these things. And you're the first traditional puffs. Like I want to do a lot of indie authors too because like I don't think indies necessarily get a lot of shine, especially on
Yeah.
Book Talk. Book Talk is
Yeah.
very much every other book is Fourth Wing and ACOTAR.
it depends what rabbit hole you go down. I always say, like you can go into, because if you are, say if you're very heavy into romance, I think when you start in book talk, you always your entry point is ACOTAR. That's the first thing when you like books, and then you've got to train your algorithm to give you what you want. So like I have gotten mine to a point where I mostly see horror recommendations and young adult recommendations and BIPOC recommendations. Like I have like veered in a completely different direction. And I do know, like, same in the romance genre, like even if you come in with ACOTAR, it depends on which videos you watch or whether you'll go down the road of indie recommendations or traditional pub recommendations. You know, it can go either way. But there are definitely like the biggest accounts on Book Talk cater to the biggest trad books. You know, that's a fact. You know, and even the book talkers themselves kind of lament about that. Like they only get views if they talk about ACOTAR, you know, like, and not if they talk about other books. So it can be hard, but in the horror space, you know, I do feel like those who read that genre a lot or exclusively do read a lot of trad and indie because, it is a niche genre. It's not as big as romance. So I think if that's all you're reading and you're a voracious reader, you are probably reading both types of authors.
Yeah, like I said, we were really interested to be able to get horror in here. We've done another horror book from, I think it is an indie author. It was Dathan Arbach, which is Pen Pal. That book has horrified me to this day. That book has bothered me. It's an amazing book. So like, it's not like bothered me because it was a bad book. It was a very, very good book. That book bothered me because like you can see what's going on and you're like, oh no, this is not going to get that worse. Oh no, it's getting worse. Oh God, why is it getting so much worse? Please stop. And then get paranoid with like being around windows, being around anybody, because it was just a very like very bothersome. I like that feeling. Why write horror?
Well, I mean, with indie, you can go as far as you want. You can go as splatterpunk, like you can go as gross, as far, as extreme as you want. I don't know. I mean, in the trad space, I don't write adult, so I don't know how far they let you go in the trad space. But with indie, there's no one that's ever going to tell you to tone it back a little bit.
My story, like the book that I wrote, it's more Bridges, scary stories to tell in the dark. Sometimes it's a little bit more adult, but like it's not. I don't go crazy. Yeah. But, like if I queried, I probably could have gotten this traditionally, but I just wanted it out because that it's something that myself and Tina do. She's actually a traditionally popular romance author, so it's a very interesting thing between the two of us to get those stories together, and a lot of fun. We have fun writing it because like the short stories allow you to kind of reinvent what you're writing on a day-to-day basis. So it feels very much like writing exercise. Like I'm going to write a story in this type of style, and then I'll write one in this type of style. So it keeps me from getting writer's block because I know as an author like that can get rough sometimes.
And I actually think they're incredibly challenging. Like my short story that I wrote for the new anthology that Cynthia Pelayo is putting out is the first fictional short story that I have published in forever. Like I'm not a short story writer. I know a lot of people in horror, that's where they kind of enter, is by writing a lot of short stories, and that's what they're known for. And it was super intimidating because the people in this anthology are very much short story writers. And so I was very nervous about doing it. And I think I like stressed over that short story that's like 5,000-6,000 words than the entire novel that I have to write. That short story was like, stress me out. You got to do something. And I'm not like, if you've read Hatchet Girls, all of my books have plot. You know what I mean? I like a lot of plot. I do the full character arcs and all of that, but my germ of an idea usually starts with plot. And a lot of short stories, especially horror, tend to be like vibes only. And a lot of like eeriness, and that it kind of like just like ends somewhere in the middle. And and I'm more of like a commercial horror writer. Like all of my ideas are very commercial and they're very plot and they have an ending and stuff. So it's like, how am I going to put that in a short story?
Yeah, I can definitely tell what you're talking about, because like a lot of my stories are just, and then she's probably going to die, but you don't know that because the story's going to end here. And you use your imagination to fill in the blank of what happens. I do have some stories that do have like a full resolution though, from time to time, because it's just like, you know what, I didn't feel like killing this person this time. It depends on the one thing I love about short stories is being able to like, look, if somebody pissed me off this week, what was that person's name? Okay, that's the person that gets.
Oh, that's so fun. That's super fun. So like so the first book that I ever wrote that landed me my first agent has never been published, but it was based on my bullying experience in middle school. It was just a contemporary story, and I used all the names.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. But then now, like a lot of the names in my books are either my friends or my friends' kids or somebody like if it's always how I make a joke at my book launches that if my friends or family don't send me a picture of their name or their kid's name in the book, then I know they haven't read it. I'm like, I'm just gonna be honest. You bought it, but I know you didn't read it because you would have sent me a picture of your name in the book. So like in The Silenced, I put 3 people's names on tombstones, and that's the first time I actually like reached out to them. Because I was like, I didn't want them to be like weirded out if their name was on a tombstone. So I was like, just to make sure they were okay with it. But yeah,
So,
but it's
so
fun to use their name.
So which of your friends' kids do you not like that you named Phil?
There is not a Phil. So I try not to do that. I try not to do that. I do know a Mariella, you know what I mean? I do have a Mariella. I have a Tessa, you know, but I try not to give the absolute bad people, a real name because I don't want to offend them too much.
Okay. Yeah, no, I don't have that problem. I have murdered some people who was like, did you mean to do that for that person? Oh, absolutely. Like, I won't give a last name, but like, yes, very much.
Oh, and I use Eagles players. Did you catch any of the Eagles players? There are 2 Eagles players' names in Hatchet Girls.
No, I didn't. Which one?
I think it's 2. Is it 2 or is it 1? I always give the cops in my books the last name of an Eagles player. So Hatchet Girls is Detective Ertz, right?
Son of a bitch! I did not even think about that.
And she's blonde with long hair, like I described Julie Ertz. Yeah.
That I did. So okay. So here's my confession. I grew up in this area. I'm a diehard Phillies fan. I love the Phillies.
Yeah.
In the 1980s, the Phillies were not the greatest team in the world. I couldn't in good conscience hate the Phillies. However, I turned my hatred on the rest of Philadelphia, and I promised myself that the first team I ever went to go see play another Philadelphia team would be my team forever. So I'm not an Eagles fan. Eagles bother me on a visual. So I've told Stream this, like, I don't like Phillies.
I shouldn't wear my Super Bowl sweatshirt.
Oh, no. You're fine. You're fine. Although up until they won the first Super Bowl, Philly was such an easier place to deal with because I can at least say it's like, how many rings do you have? And now they can say I have 2, and it bothers me. But like, no, I was a Cub Scout. I went to a game and I got to watch Joe Montana play and come from behind and beat the Eagles, and that became I'm a 49ers fan. However, the reason I hate Phillies fans on a visceral level is because I bought a pennant. I was like, ooh, I'm gonna spend money. I'm gonna buy a 49ers pennant. And as we were going out to the bus, I got surrounded by Phillies fans. They took the pennant and ripped the pennant up in front of me and then spit on me. This is a 10-year-old kid dressed in full Cub Scout uniform. This is not like just some like. Oh my god! They spit on a Cub Scout and they laughed and cheered about it, and I was like, I wish your team nothing but turmoil for the rest of my natural life. So like, I can't in good conscience ever root for the Eagles just because I see the faces of the people that actually spit on a child. And I can't.
There was a prison in the old Veterans Stadium with good reason, you know.
There absolutely was. There absolutely was.
The 700 level deserved all of its reputation.
Yes, and I was on. So like when we did this, like we were handing out hats and stuff like that. So I actually got to be on the field at vet stadiums, which is really cool. But like also, when you're on the field, you can't see the game. Like you can't see anything of the game.
Oh yes.
Because like
that's absolutely true.
Yeah, because there's just a wall of people.
I had somebody give us preseason tickets like that they had through work where you were like literally the first row, like you know, on the field, and where like you could see like, you know, Jake Elliott practicing his kick and all of that and the cheerleaders, but you couldn't see crap of what was actually.
Every now and then you'll see a ball like fly over the crowd and into the air, but that's literally it. So like, while it was cool to be on the field, like it's not an enjoyable like viewing of the game. But I will hate the Eagles the rest of my life. And
so
but it's
I
cool.
have Eagles players. I have them in every single one of my books, even going back to the first book. I had a kid, this was like 2008, so I had a kid named Bobby McNabb, and he sits at table number 5, which was his number. I have in like my spy thriller series, Detective Dawkins and Detective McCoy.
Okay.
Every single one of them, I managed to work them in. And in the silence, there will definitely, I usually give it to the cops. I usually give it to the police name. So you'll have to see.
I'll be
I've
looking
never
for that
had
in the
anybody tell me they've seen it, though. Like, I've never had someone ask me if it was an Eagles player.
Well, now it will be. But I'll definitely be getting your book because, like, I enjoy your writing.
Thank you.
I really enjoy the writing.
So
And everybody who read your book in here, they also enjoyed your writing. They liked the story. Nobody was just like, no, this sucked. So,
thank you.
and our people are vocal. Definitely some people that have not liked some of the books that we've done, and they're just like, I don't like this book, and they gave me like 1,000 reasons why. But we haven't had anybody that's just like, oh no, this book sucked. So, no,
that's good to hear. Are
least
most of your members like horror and thriller fans?
No, we're kind of all over the place. So
Okay.
we like for example, we've done everything. So like the books that we've done so far. But yeah, so we've done One Dark Window, Two Twisted Crowns, Heartless Hunter, Witch of the Wild Things, which was a contemporary romance with a little bit of paranormal sprinkled in. Pen Pal, which is very much like horrifying. Jar of Hearts, which was a thriller. Games God's Play, which is romantasy. Shades of Orthea, which is an indie fantasy. Hot Pursuit was romance, and then yours was horror. So like we've been all over the place. We try not to stick to one genre because that can kind of get boring for everybody, and it might leave people out. So we always try to change up the books so that way, even if they're not necessarily a fan of this particular genre, there's always going to be somebody can.
Oh, that's nice. You know, I've never been a participant in a book club ever. I'm too much of a mood reader, so I think I would struggle too much being told what to read if I wasn't in the mood to read it. If that makes sense. That
does make a lot of sense, and that's why we always give people X number of weeks to get it. It's not like, oh no, we're going to talk about this in 3 days. I'm like, no, I am a slow reader and everything like that. So like, if you'd like to join our book club, you're fine. I know you've read Hatchet Girl, so at least you'll have 1 star.
Yeah.
But no, I don't pressure anybody to read the books. Like if you look, like my whole thing is like, kids have had it too good for too long, so we're taking back our gold stars. So like we give stars and everybody. And if you don't read the book, you didn't read the book. It's like not everybody is going to like the genre that we're reading, and so that's why we go through a little bit of everything. And Cajun's like, I'm gonna dump a pair of rabid wolverines down my pants. Why? He's talking about Twilight. Alert. We bust Cajun's balls all the time with Twilight. He grew up and his name was Edward, and his best friend was Jacob, and of course that.
Oh no way!
Yeah, and he also knew of Bella, and so of course he was subjected to all of that without it was merciless. He's yelling at me.
I can see that.
But I don't want to take up a lot of your time because, like I said, we were only here for about an hour or so. If you wanted it, but yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, I'd love to have you back in September, if you'd like.
Sure. Yeah, let's do it.
Because I definitely have a feeling that we're going to be reading that book.
Probably more like October, because I think it comes out in mid-September, so you'll need some time to read it.
Yes, yeah. We'll pick it. We'll once it comes out. Like I said, we give everybody about 3 weeks. Like we go with Hatchet Girls. We took that at the beginning of February, at the very beginning of February, maybe even the last week of January. Gave everybody time. We want to make sure everybody has time to get the book and then read the book and have enough time. So we usually go in 3-week intervals to get the book and 2 weeks to read the book, and then we discuss. So yeah, I mean, we can definitely have you back in October.
Definitely. And if you ever want a signed copy, like of whether it's like Small Town Monsters or the new book, my local indie bookstore is Children's Book World in Haverford, PA. So if you order from them and then just put in the notes that please ask Diana to sign it, I'll stop in and sign it before they mail it
hell
out.
yeah, I will definitely do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
So, just double check. It's Children's Book World, Haverford, PA. There is a Children's Book World in California. It's not that one.
Yeah, no.
So, yeah. Yeah. So thank you so much for having me.
Definitely, I appreciate it. And like I said, it was we read the book, and like I said, we like to support authors that aren't necessarily like Sarah J. Maas because
Right.
everybody can read those books. Try to like go around and grab stuff that not necessarily is on radar, but like they should be radar.
You
'Cause,
know
like,
she's the local girl? Sarah J. Maas lives in Bucks County.
no way.
Yeah. I've never personally met her, but a lot of like the local authors have met her at some point. I mean, she doesn't do group events anymore, so like you have to meet her like at a convention pretty much, but she lives in Bucks County.
I did not
Yeah.
know that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like I said, we wanted to bring you on. You're local to me, so it was just like, oh look, it's a local author that I can talk to from time to time that
Yeah.
maybe pick their brain when I'm going nuts trying to write a book myself.
Absolutely. Feel
like,
free. You can always DM me.
Yeah, because I'm in the middle of writing my fantasy novel. I'm like, chapters in that, so like that should be done this year. So my goal is 3 books.
Oh gosh, congrats. I
Well,
can't
what-
do it.
Well, the short story anthology, the second volume of Tall Tales and Campfire Ashes is already done. I just need to edit it.
Okay.
So like that's
Okay.
just that's an edit issue. That one's done.
Yeah.
Fantasy, romantasy, and romance in there. So like I kind of hop genres because basically just I'll read something like, oh, I can write something like that too, and go for it.
Awesome. All right. Well, good luck and congrats on the books. And yeah, feel free. You can always ask me questions.
I appreciate it. And guys,
Thank
again, give it up for Diana Rodriguez Wallach.
Thanks for having me.
This is Hatchet Girls. If you haven't gotten it already, if you haven't read it, it is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You're on Barnes & Noble, right?
Yes.
Yes, Barnes & Nobles or wherever
Everywhere.
you get your books. Support indie bookstores if you have the opportunity. And if you happen to be near Haverford, go there and get a signed copy.
Yes. You can order it from their website.
Yep.
So, yeah. All right. Thank you,
thank you.
guys.